couple of years ago was particularly memorable for its action. As the pace car went around the racing circle of 2.5 miles, the field was strangely scattered, as cars seemed unable to find their proper places in the lineup of 33 entries. Instead of a neat lineup of 11 rows of 3 cars each, this start looked like a freeway traffic jam, and there was a terrible tension in the air that the unspoken fear of racing might become a reality. And then it happened, as Salt Walther, the youngest driver in the race, crashed into the stands. 75 gallons of fiercely burning racing fuel were spewed onto the track and into the grandstand. Drivers as well as many spectators were casualties. But the race went on. Again, a single split second of misjudgment. Was started a third time. Now the start was almost sedate as drivers leisurely pulled on their gloves as they drove by. Despite 3 starts, the field had not yet completed one full racing lap. Then it happened again. In the slippery 4th turn, another car lost control. Another racing car driver died. Next, a crew member running to help was killed by a truck racing to the accident. And so it went. Shortly after the wreckage had been cleared, the race would be restarted once again, and again, if needed, until at last the 500 miles of Indianapolis had been covered for yet another year.
Here I have,
This is that big one, man.
Every year, more than 1.5 million families know the nightmare of an automobile accident. 43,000 people are killed each year, and 1.5 million are injured, many crippled or disfigured for life. Individuals, couples, entire families killed or injured, year in, year out. Today, 122 will die. Another 4,200 will be seriously injured. What causes this carnage? Carelessness, thoughtlessness, speed, the inability to stop, blowouts, loss of control, skidding, caused by inadequate, unsafe tires.
We're gonna get him!
It's just about as easy to fill out a dead body report as it is a traffic ticket. And in many cases, the violation is the same. Speed. I've been checking some figures for a report, and I'd like to show you what I found. It's important to you. Look at these changes in the motor vehicle death rate of our population per 100,000 for the past 25 years. Between the ages of 5 and 14, there was a 37% drop. Between the ages of 25 and 44, a 25% increase. But get this, in the 15 to 24 year group, the increase was more than 85%. Those are the actual figures from the ages 15 to 24. An increase in deaths per 100,000 of 86%. Let's face it, a car in the hands of some teenagers today produces a serious problem. So serious has this problem become that we have a new word in our language. It's teenicide, a noun meaning death caused by an automobile driver under 20 years of age.
California's main artery, Interstate 5, had collapsed at the 14 freeway interchange, taking the life of one LAPD officer with it, and leaving the communities of the Santa Clarita Valley literally cut off from the rest of Los Angeles.
Initially, the dispatch was a traffic collision involving a train, so we're not really expecting what we saw when we got there. As we got closer, we could see the train car sticking up in the air. It was a very lunar landscape. This white powder was covering everything for a couple of blocks. And there's 7 houses that are covered up, and 3 of them are completely flat.
Backup fire, police, and rescue units were summoned immediately. Those on scene began the grim search for survivors.
Our first concern was to find any injuries or missing people.
This test demonstrates something parents don't even want to think about. An unprotected infant smashing into the instrument panel.
Frontal car crashes. Each year they kill thousands of Americans and injure hundreds of thousands. The majority of all fatal injuries to people in collisions occur in head-on and angled frontal car crashes. In a frontal crash, it's all over in a split second. Let's imagine that we're in the front seat of a car like this, that these test dummies are me, or you, or someone you love. Watch. On the highway, they'd be real people.
The Highway Patrol, we're going to be responsible for cleaning you up when you crash and kill yourself. And it's not pretty. It's not a pretty sight. And if you ever take a trip to the morgue, you ever see what an autopsy looks like, or you ever go by an accident scene and you see what the devastation looks like on the relatives' faces of someone who's been killed in an accident, you wouldn't make that choice.
Today, one witness took the stand, the deputy first on the scene of the accident.
The first thing that I saw was a body laying in the road. It was in several pieces.
And she says there was a foot with 2 more bodies nearby. As the prosecutor prepared to show the jury the picture of a mutilated body, the proceeding came to a halt.
They pled guilty to the 2 counts of DUI manslaughter and 3 counts of DUI with causing serious bodily injury.
For Chevrolet value, Chevrolet resale, Chevrolet guts and strength and dependability run long and deep and far into the life of an automobile. 6 million cars a year end here. The actual scrappage figures for a recent period present a very startling picture.
Patrol testing 2H32, 2H32, possible injury collision. Your code is 3, Raymond and Villa, Test over.
2H32, 10-4. Judy. Judy. Is she conscious or?
First job on an accident assignment is to see that it doesn't get worse. Park your car so it can serve as a shield a good 50 feet in back of the accident location. The next priority is first aid for the injured. A person with injuries that might be made worse through movement should be left where he is if in a safe place till the ambulance gets there. Never put them in the police car shielding the accident. Call in for medical help if it's not already on the way.
2H32, would you roll an ambulance for traffic assistance?
Laying out flares. Watch out for spilled gasoline. And make sure people are careful with cigarettes, too. If there are serious injuries or fatalities, photographs of the accident scene will be taken. Everything significant should be photographed to provide evidence on both cause and effect of the accident.
I know I sometimes drive too fast. And I take chances. I don't always try to figure out what the other fellow's going to do. I must work harder at this. I must get seat belts for the car. Be twice as safe.
Pinned in the vehicle.
There's a guy trapped in here.
The steering wheel was pushed against him. He was pinned between the steering wheel and the seat, and the door was jammed on that side.
Let's get the slayer out of here.
I knew at that time there was no way to get the driver out of the vehicle. Knowing there was no water, we just shoveled dirt with our hands to try to snuff out the fire. There was an explosion, a fireball, and it knocked me back. I couldn't understand why we were having an explosion out of the cab itself.
Bring it in.
What they didn't know was there was a case of fireworks inside the truck.
I just got up and I went right back to what I was doing, because to watch somebody burn inside a truck is not a very pretty sight, and definitely didn't want to give up on them.
Meanwhile, collision investigator Dave Taylor arrives to carry out a forensic investigation of the scene.
As I said to quite a lot of officers, if somebody had come onto the A64 at 5:30 this morning or this afternoon with a shotgun and killed somebody, nobody would be allowed into this scene. That is exactly the same what has happened. What you've got here is you've got two people driving lethal weapons, i.e. cars, and someone has been injured as a result of someone using that. That's the analogy that I use.
If the driver survives and one of the other occupants dies in that vehicle, then he is culpable and he potentially would be responsible, and we'd be looking at a criminal investigation then. So albeit that we have got other witnesses who say that the taxi pulled out, we've got to be absolutely certain. We've got to gather as much evidence as we can that if need be we could take a watertight case to court.
Chief says he heard a loud crash this afternoon and screaming. He ran outside to find a car mangled and shocked witnesses. Now he's concerned for his own safety on the road.
We heard screaming and the car engine, and then brakes, and then sounded like something just crashed. It was loud enough so that you could probably hear it from a block away.
Those sounds of terror brought Chris Collazo out of his Cape Coral home Sunday afternoon. A dark blue Corvette and a bicycle were going east on Diplomat Parkway, heading toward Andalusia Boulevard, when the car collided with the bike.
I've never seen any car ripped apart like this. Can you tell me a little bit about that 250 and how it's just torn apart?
Yeah, this is quite a horrific collision. For unknown reasons, the F-250 traveled onto the center median and collided with the rear of that Caltrans grader. And then the driver of the F-250, as a result of that collision, succumbed to his injuries. The result of that F-250 after the collision, it's completely destroyed. I would say a lot of that is due to the vehicle it collided with. That Caltrans grader is very solid steel, very heavy, large vehicle that didn't budge much. So when that F-250 collided with it, it destroyed.
Their bodies were burned so badly that the whole bus had to be loaded onto a flatbed truck and transported to the National Guard Armory before they could be removed. Because the bodies are so badly burned, investigators here will have to use dental records to identify the victims, and that process could take several days. The investigation of the accident itself could take weeks. What could take even longer is for the investigators, who see death regularly, to shake their image of last night.
A very burned out bus, a strong stench of burnt flesh, a very saddened, gut-shaking experience.
It's a very dark area. There's no street lights. When I arrived, I could see with my headlights a body in the roadway. I stopped my car, called for EMS, and I could see a teenage girl and a teenage boy laying on the side of the road, bleeding very badly from their legs. Both of them had their legs partially severed.
When a 9-car accident occurred during this weather, a truck driver, unable to see the road ahead, crashed into these cars at 90 miles per hour. His 38-ton truck jammed the cars into one another, and a huge fire resulted. Those who weren't burned to death were trapped and crushed in their vehicles.
Sadly, in the last 12 months, the carnage at level crossings has been horrific. Just a few weeks after Trawalla, a truck driver died when his heavy truck, loaded with 30 tons of citrus pulp, collided with this massive freight train near the Victorian town of Lismore. 700 metres of carriages were compacted by the massive forces into a 150-metre long pyramid of twisted metal.
At least 2 of the cars involved in the accident were so charred that police couldn't locate the license plates, making it impossible to immediately identify the victims or even their home states. We do know 6 people were incinerated as a result of the explosion which followed the accident. It happened, according to state police, here in the northbound lanes on Interstate 95 at the Stratford Toll Plaza. A North Carolina truck carrying yams and potatoes apparently lost control, ran through an automatic toll booth, hitting several cars from the rear and setting off the explosion.
Investigation shows that the truck, for some reason, just went through the toll lane and struck 2 or 3 vehicles, and there was an explosion, and we have 6 people incinerated right now.
And I just didn't feel comfortable stopping the car until on the side of the road until I could get an off-ramp, because I was not, that engine light wasn't going to kill me at that point, but stopping my car on the side of the road, I wasn't so sure.
Car accidents, violent crashes.
Everybody at the scene is affected by it.
Unexpected injuries.
I have some questions to answer, and I have to get past the sad part pretty fast. I need to go change and start work.
Before the Tahoe was hit, an initial Florida Highway Patrol report says this semi failed to slow, and nobody knows why.
The rear seats were pushed up to the front seats, and the front seats were broken back from the impact.
Attorney Joe Camerlengo took us to see what still remains of the Tahoe. The fire was so hot,
fiercely burning fire.
Personal effects like this shoe melted to the car's frame.
The jeans that you see here would have been Tredasia, who was sitting in this seat right here.
During the few minutes while you've been watching this film, somewhere in America, 2 people have been killed in automobile accidents, and perhaps 100 have been injured. They're killing each other at the rate of 55,000 a year, and leaving between 2 and 4 million people crippled as a result of highway accidents.